Thank you so much. Namaskar. Welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi Achint. हमारे साथ हैं. I have with me Ambassador Kanwal Sibal. He has some very strong views, as a matter of fact, about global geopolitics. I love that, and that's why I love talking to him. And one of the things that we will try and understand is what is Trump's plan, and how should India deal with this, radical, strong-headed transactional mentality that Mr. Trump has. So, Namaskar. Thank you so much. Welcome to the show.
Namaskar. My pleasure.
So, open with, is there a method to this madness that is actually happening?
Well, yes, in the sense that it is in some ways madness, especially if you look at what Trump is doing from the viewpoint of the established system, or what you might call in Europe and in America, what you might call the deep state, which includes bureaucrats and think tanks and media and civil society and activists in general, which over the last few decades have, as part of this liberal ideas, developed a narrative and a worldview which they are trying to promote through various organizations, with the WEF as one of the key components, and Soros and what have you. So these people obviously are totally at sea with regard to what Trump is doing, because uh, this time he's not doing it piecemeal or in bits and pieces. He's sweeping the board with a broom, and that is unsettling. And that actually may be unsettling not only for people who oppose Trump, but also for those who may favor him and may have generally positive feelings about what he intends to do, because he's a radical. He's truly a radical in his thinking, and the kind of decisions that he has taken were unimaginable. Just now, I was reading, was rather seeing on television, that he has withdrawn or closed down or intends to shut down Voice of America and many other media organizations financed by an organization in America called something for Global Media. And I was interested to see that they are withdrawing funding as a consequence of this to the Woodrow Wilson Center for International Relations. And those guys actually have people who specialize in Indian affairs, and have some people who are interviewed on our channels and generally write about India. So it's a big sweep. Uh, so from his viewpoint, the method in the madness is quite clear. He created this Doge, Department of Governmental Efficiency. He's put a chap like Elon Musk in charge, who also is a businessman, and he looks for the bang for the buck, and then sees whether all that money that is being spent by the federal government is delivering returns that are advantageous to the American state or not. So cut down bureaucracy, cut down the Department of uh, Education, withdraw funding from universities if they are promoting woke ideas, from hospitals, from this, for that. Generally reduce government expenditure. And the fact is that America is a hugely indebted country. Um, Now it's okay, you can keep printing dollars, but how long can you continue to do that? Because each time you print more and more dollars, you are in a sense devaluing the dollar too. Uh, so, and at some stage there will be a payback. As you see that periodically, there is a scare that the government, federal government, is going to shut down because because the Congress has to be persuaded to release the funds for continuing payments to the bureaucrats and this and that. So, in that sense, he has uh, taken steps which would make a lot of sense in terms of the broader objective of cutting down on government expenditure. But then, example, he has now virtually, um, you know, hamstrung the operations of U.S. aid. Now, this may make a sense in a on a broader plane, but when you come to specifics, then there are some good things that are also being done. Now, for example, in the case of USA, they have been funding programs, social programs in many countries, which they need to do that if they want to have the cover of humanitarian assistance under which they can then do their other operations. Then there is something that they're doing positive on the ground. And the people who then are deprived of funds are now howling that, these programs have been stopped, and some African countries have protested. So the long short is, well, let me add one more before we go on to the next question. Now, the tariffs business. Now, what is the method in that matter? Now, here, from his point of view, America has been an open economy. Its tariffs have been very low. It's been sucking in imports from the rest of the world, which means that there is an inbuilt system of the economic system under which America will always have a trade deficit, because they're importing cheap stuff from all over the world, from all countries. I mean, if China has $1 trillion surplus this year or last year, US has a $1 trillion deficit. So how to get rid of this deficit? So what he's saying is, I'll raise tariffs, and I'll then earn a lot of money through tariffs, and that will balance off some of the issues they may arise in terms of the challenge to the US economy. He's created this external revenue service, and he thinks that he's going to rope in billions and billions, and may actually therefore be able to implement his plans for tax reductions in the United States, even to the extent of people talking that he may abolish income tax, because he will substitute that loss with the earnings from the tariffs. Now, the danger in this is that other countries are not going to take it lying down. They will impose reciprocal tariffs. There will be trade wars. It will destabilize the global economy. And that's not going to help the United States of America. Initially, yes, even in India, we are very concerned. If you see, there's a sense of panic if you read the newspapers about what may happen if he goes and announces tariffs on April 2, and what sectors would be affected in India. This morning, I was reading about how our aluminium exporters, America is one of the largest markets for aluminium exports, how they are worried that they may lose $1 billion of exports to the United States as a result of higher tariffs. And then, as you know, the government is now doing very intensive homework about on how we're going to address the tariffs issue, because it is now our biggest economic partner in goods and services. And if we have a surplus with them, about $46 billion. So as it is, we have a deficit when it comes to international trade. The United States is remarkable that we have a surplus. Now, if that is hurt, then it can have an impact on our economy. Rupee is already losing value. There's been a lot of movement out of our country of foreign funds. The Sensex is not doing that well. And these problems can get aggravated. And if there's really a trade war that begins, then there will be an all-round impact on the global economy. And the other concern is that when he imposes high tariffs on China, and China finds that its huge trade with the United States is being affected, they will look for markets elsewhere. They will start dumping goods in other parts of the world, including India. And we are already thinking about that and how we're going to protect ourselves by raising tariffs or finding other ways to stop this dumping, anti-dumping duties and stuff like that. With Europe, he's going to have a rough time because the European Commission has said that they will also impose $25 billion worth of tariffs on the United States. China has already reacted. Now, this also means that the WTO, which was quasi moribund, will now, in fact, in some senses, become ineffective because what he's doing is totally contrary to WTO. He cannot just unilaterally raise tariffs like this. Now, there is an analysis which makes some sense, which is that Trump, through his actions, is actually redrawing the entire global trading system. And he's at the center of it. Every country now has to think about how it's going to react to what Trump is doing because it's the largest economy. It sucks in imports from all over the world. And if suddenly 1 trillion worth of exports to United States are affected, because that's their deficit, hmm, which means that $1 trillion of goods that the other countries were exporting to the United States will get disrupted. How it will affect their economies. So it's a very serious matter. and and the cards are, at least Trump thinks, and maybe not entirely wrongly, so that the cards are in his hands, given the fact that it's the largest economy, the biggest, it has the US dollar as the reserve currency of the world. It has been manipulating that as a weapon against other countries. And no country can easily withdraw from the American market. So anyway, so that is the method in his madness. It is madness, and there is a method behind it. Unfortunately, the end result of this is not entirely clear, and whether simply because America at the moment seems to have a lot of cards on its hands necessarily means that as we go forward, uh, the crippling of the international trade system in some senses and the impact of what he's doing on that system, what are the problems it will raise in terms of the global economy? And we had this 2008 financial crisis. Everybody had to get together to see how to address it because the interests of everyone uh, was involved. Now, in this case, uh, there is no, it's all unilateral. There's no coming together to see, look, how this is going to have long-term impact on everybody's economic interests. And therefore, we should have some kind of a consensus on how to handle this issue. But this is not happening. He look, even on his partners, where there are signed agreements. He had already changed NAFTA during his first term. And the second term, there is this America, Canada, Mexico trade agreement. He's violated that by imposing 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Now, if he can do that to his allies, to his partners, with which he has signed agreements, so you can imagine the concerns of other countries who that they are so vulnerable that he can virtually do as he pleases.
So, but I look at it also another way. He's kind of changing the world order from being a more ideological world order to a more transactional world order to a more power politic on his aspect of it. And he's telling the rest of the world to kind of get real in life. So it's about hard commodities, trade, security. Tuck.
You're
You know,
right.
you're
You're right, but I don't entirely share that analysis for this reason that America had prior to Trump and his vision of America's place in the world, the American leaders had their own vision of their place in the world. And that was that they are going to control the global system, except that the ideology or the thinking behind it and the policies behind it were somewhat different. After all, if United States promoted globalization, it's not because of the good of the world. It was because this was the way the multinational corporations will spread their wings worldwide, and there will be a global field available for American capital to operate in. and they will rake in billions because they will move to places where there are cheaper labor costs. They'll produce goods at cheaper cost, export them to the United States. So the United States would be the recipient of cheap goods manufactured abroad, which will keep their inflation under control, and it will benefit the U.S. Consumer. Except that the logic of the multinationals and what they were doing on the ground uh, collided, as we have seen, with the interests of the American middle class because the manufacturing moved out of the United States and started raising internal issues of of uh, you know unemployment, of uh, you know the average American finding it more and more difficult on the uh, to live, or rather economically find themselves in a more and more difficult position. And there was a clear um, uh, effect on the prosperity of the American people as a whole, and therefore there was a backlash. But the intention of the previous globalization system or the America's globalist policies was not altruism. It was a way to dominate the world. And it was backed by what? It was backed by American power. That you couldn't change the system because America was the strongest country. And of course, there were all these uh, links between Europe and hence this globalist agenda, which then veered into another direction, which again was to preserve Western hegemony, that we're going to have political systems in other countries which will be amenable to their control. Therefore, promote democracy, huh? Raise the issue of human rights, put the leadership on the defensive, organize, if possible, regime changes in those countries so that the domination of the West could not be challenged. So, therefore, what Trump is now trying to do is that the consequences of that policy, in the way that I've described, its impact on the American public. Now he's correcting course, but the idea is still the same, that United States will remain the dominant power. What does MAGA mean? Make America great again. I mean, great in what? Sitting in front of the television on a comfortable sofa and saying, I'm great again. I mean, that's the purpose is
That was
that
if America was great at one time.
whatever ground that they have lost internationally with the rise of China and other countries, and generally speaking, that whatever they have lost in terms of power and domination, that they want to retrieve and become preeminent again. Preeminent again. That's what the idea of making America great again. And how is it being reflected? Now, you just see what he's doing. He's saying that Canada doesn't need to be a separate country because it's totally dependent on the United States, and it's surviving because of the United States, because the United States needs nothing from China. He says US doesn't want their lumber, their cars, or anything else. We can manufacture all these things ourselves. He tells Europe or tells Denmark, forget it. It's because some Viking ship some centuries ago went to Greenland, that therefore it's become yours, and I don't buy it. It's going to be ours because we need it for international security, for the free world. And he tells the Panamanians, we built this canal, and now you got the Chinese coming in and controlling ports at the mouths, at both the mouths of the Panama Canal, and building bridges overhead, which obstructs our naval ships from passing through. And we have so much of our naval ships, very advanced ones, aircraft carriers and others, going through here, and the Chinese have a ringside view. So therefore, it's going to be ours, and we're going to recover control over that. Now, you look at the imperial mindset behind it. This is what make America great again. And he tells the Europeans, go and fend for yourself, that you've been rooking us all these years. We got this $300 billion or whatever deficit with you. Uh, uh, you have gone ahead merrily exporting a lot to us, not buying enough from us. Uh, putting taxes on our firms, and we provide you security. But there's no payback on this. Therefore, if you want our security, then you pay for it. Therefore, spend more money on your defense. You spend more money on your defense in countries where they don't have the kind of surpluses to spend that kind of money, because um, their social systems, etc., are are extremely expensive. And if you withdraw money away from the social uh, security systems that they have, and the other advantages they give to their public, 1 month holidays and this, that, in some of these countries. Uh, if they siphon off money from there, as it is, there are a lot of social problems, as you can see in Europe, a lot of dissatisfaction. In France, you've had the Gilets jaunes. In Germany, there's a backlash. Employment is falling. Volkswagen is now having big problems. There is a recession. Britain is not doing well. So if you increase your defense spending from whatever it is, 1.5, 1.8% or thereabouts, to 3% or 5%, where's the money going to come from? It'll have to be the cost of the social schemes. That will create more unhappiness, resistance at the level of the citizens, and the governments will be under pressure. And then at the end of the day, and this is a question I ask myself, is Europe looking for permanent confrontation with Russia? Because once they spend, Poland is going to reach 5%. Once they spend 3% or whatever, and build up their armament industry, the European Union president of the Commission has announced 800 billion euros for developing the defense industry of Europe. Once they have done that, and there is some kind of a peace agreement with Russia, then what happens? What will be the justification of doing this, unless they're looking for permanent confrontation? No, that is not a geopolitical vision of any kind, of any sensible geopolitical vision cannot be that we'll have permanent hostility with Russia, that there's no scope at all going forward of having a kind of a understanding with Russia, reducing tensions. So in any case, if they develop all this huge military machine, it's for use against whom? It can't be used against Russia. Russia is a very formidable nuclear power. Russia, purely logically speaking, what is Russia's interest in attacking Western Europe? Absolutely no interest. Absolutely no interest. It is not strong enough. Its economy is not strong enough. Its manpower is not sufficient. And at the end of the day, they also want stability. They want good relations with Europe. Challenging Western Europe, inviting NATO would actually multiply manyfold the problems they have in handling Ukraine militarily. At the
It's
moment,
also an aging country, so it doesn't have the manpower to do it.
see, at the moment, the NATO is indirectly involved, and Russia is finding it difficult. If NATO gets directly involved, you can see the problem gets magnified. So,
Yeah.
so therefore, what will Europe do with this? And then they can't support these military machines unless they export. So what will they do? They'll have to find export markets. I mean, to my mind, it's all ridiculous. The easiest way out is actually to find ways to establish a reasonable peace between the two sides. But that doesn't seem to be their direction.
That's the problem. So they seem to be wanting to continue because I think that's the point, that's where they find their relevance. And they know if this war is over, there'll be nothing for, I mean, Europe won't be in the picture at all. As long as this war is continuing, Europe is in the picture. If that thing was over, I mean, what's the relevance of Europe after that in the world today?
No, I would put it differently. I tell you why.
So,
At the end of the day, it's a continent of 600 million people.
yeah,
Almost twice the population. A huge consumption market, huge, because their standards of living are very high, and they're used to those standards of living. Now they have excellent technologies, except that they're distributed between various countries. It is not under a single entity like in China or United States. Huge technologies, huge manufacturing. they have actually more manufacturing than the United States of America. Uh, Again, is not under one central government like in China, where they can actually develop an industrial policy, a manufacturing policy with a long-term vision. Here, Brussels cannot play that role.
We can't. Mm.
So, but but Europe has a role to play. And then in the larger scheme of things, when it comes to climate change, environment, and stuff like that, you cannot do without Europe. They have to be a player. Uh, India, actually, we have uh, European Union as a single entity in terms of goods is our, I think, the second largest trade partner, and we have roughly balanced trade with Europe. Now we are trying to have an FTA with the European Union and with the UK and this and that, uh, and and that will actually increase our trade volumes with Europe. Then we have a Trade Technology Council, which will potentially open up more technology, high technology flows to India. There's great scope for investment from Europe. And the important thing is that now that there are tensions between Europe and United States, they have to look for alternatives. Uh, they have to have other options in terms of sustaining uh, their economy and their relevance, as you said. It can't be China because China is
That's the
now.
point, sir. If Europe, I mean, so pardon me for interrupting you. If they hedge
They
their
have,
bets properly, they're fine.
they have to turn towards India. Sorry. That's why van der Leyen came with the 22 over 27 commissioners. The equations have changed.
Yeah,
Sorry, you
yeah.
were saying?
No, I'm just saying, if they hedge their bets properly, that it's fine. Otherwise, it's going to be a challenge for them. And they're one of the things I'm noticing about Europe is very interesting is that a sense of reality does dawn on them, but they can't shed the past. They just can't. They're not able to do it.
You're right. Except that I'm beginning to wonder whether the elites uh, have still a sense of reality. Because I watch the statements that they are making.
Yeah, the
Uh,
public statements are crazy, sir. I mean, just
it
wonder.
doesn't make sense at all. The kind of thing Starmer says, kind of thing. Regrettably, because I've already had a bit of a weakness for France, but the kind of things the French president is saying, it doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah,
Uh, and then you have the Baltic states, which are making, uh, which are ridiculing themselves. They have no experience of geopolitics, no understanding of the larger world, have borne never any responsibility for international affairs of any kind. And they are now controlling, in some senses, the European Union. The foreign policy chief is a lady who wants the breakup of Russia.
yep.
Uh, so I'm beginning to doubt, and the kind of suppression of free speech in Europe. You can't take positions against the government, and those who take them run the risk of being excluded from society. It is so how should I say, it becomes so difficult for dissent in Europe, as I hear from some of the European friends I have, that they don't want to be vocal because they don't want to get uh, they don't want to invite problems uh, for themselves.
One thing I'm noticing about India is that if I'm sure you've read the recent interview with Mr. Jaishankar by the Financial Times, and similar statements were made by him in the Chatham House as well. Interesting location, by the way, the Chatham House. Um, one thing that he is saying is that why is the world surprised that Trump is behaving this way? Which is very interesting to me because that tells you that there's a lot of homework which has happened in India, which apparently has not happened around the world. These guys know what they're dealing with. So, would you kind of put our policy a little bit on a higher edge than the rest of these people? And how do you think the push for the FTA that Trump is kind of pushing for, and I mean, equally we are as well, what kind of safeguards would we want to put into place, sir?
See, one is that we are keeping up a posture which has some merit to it. Uh, that we dealt with Trump in his first term, and it was, and we came out rather well. Uh, in the sense that we were able to manage him. Number two, Modi and Trump managed to establish a personal equation, which was helpful and will continue to be helpful. Number three, the people that he has selected in very key positions, whether it is Mike Waltz or Mark Rubio or Tulsi Gabbard, uh, they have a long history of being friendly towards India. Number four, Trump, of course, is unpredictable as to what he might do with regard to China. But nevertheless, the reality is that China is now considered a long-term adversary of the United States. And while United States would have compulsions to engage China because they're the biggest trade partner, and they don't want a military conflict with China, and therefore talking to China, trying to reduce tensions in that region to avoid an open military conflict would continue to be US policy. But behind that is a consistent policy of trying to challenge China, trying to ensure that its capacity to challenge the United States, especially on the technological side, would be impaired. And there are sanctions that have been imposed, technological sanctions that have been imposed on China. And now they're changing their tune on Taiwan, as you notice. In the latest G7 meeting also, they have excluded many of the nuances of their Taiwan policy, which sends a signal to China. So the China factor will continue to be there. And that will mean that if they look around in Asia, which is the country that is their natural partner in establishing deterrence against China, it is India. And therefore, the value of India would always be there. So these are some of the reasons why Jaishankar may have said that, we are not as worried about China as some other countries are. So I don't think it's a matter of homework in that sense. It's just a deducing a certain position from our experience of Trump and an examination of our value to the United States. And I'm not mentioning now that in the technological field, if United States wants to go ahead and it needs India's talent, there is a synergy there, very clear synergy there. So it's not as if it's purely strategic in the political military sense, security sense. On the economic side also, there is a lot of benefit that accrues to the United States from Indian talent. One can go into this kind of global capability centers, but I understand about 40% or 60% of these GCCs are by American multinationals. They are the ones who are actually developing intellectual property with the Indians, and then of course we derive no benefit from it. They control the IPs and this and that. Insofar as the FTA is concerned, I don't think we are looking at an FTA at this stage. What we are looking is looking at is a multi-sector trade agreement. The first tranche of it will be hopefully finalized by this autumn, when the Quad summit is expected to take place, and President Trump would be present. So as to be able to announce something important on that occasion. The other is that this is a strategy on our side, and a sensible strategy. Okay, you are interested in raising tariffs. We are saying, okay, we are amenable to your demand for lowering our tariffs, but let's do it in a win-win way. That we have a bilateral trade agreement under which we reduce tariffs and you don't impose higher tariffs on us. We will look at things you want to export to us, and we can try and accommodate as much as possible. And you, in turn, do not make our exports to the United States more problematic by raising tariffs. This is it's an intensive discussion, and I understand that we have done intensive homework already uh, on how and what we can do in terms of reduction of tariffs. And there was some discussion that took place with Jamieson Greer, the USTR, and the US Commerce Secretary Lutnick when Prime Minister went there
Yeah.
to So already some talk had taken place there. And then, as you've seen, Piyush Goyal has gone immediately to the United States to have more discussions with the United States before April 2, so that the United States doesn't take a decision precipitately from which it'll be difficult for it to walk back and unnecessarily uh, uh, spoil the atmosphere for give and take, which is necessary. Uh, so there are still issues because I heard Lutnik in the India Today conclave, and he had some views. He wanted an across-the-board reduction of tariffs by India, including opening up of agriculture, which we
Interesting,
will
right?
not do, which we will
Interesting.
not do, which we will not do. We will, of course, here and there make some adjustments, but there's no way that we can do that. But some other things, uh, but in terms of across the board reduction of tariffs, I don't think we can do that.
Yeah.
Uh, so it is a matter of negotiation, but I think our strategy is right,
Yeah.
and we would expect the United States to be
Mm.
more accommodative and more sensible and more practical in this regard, rather than taking this ideological position that your tariffs are very high, our tariffs are very low, and therefore you have to reduce your tariffs. It's not as simple as that.
Yeah. I mean, what I find very interesting is that uh, he takes the Indian example only for tariffs. There's nothing else. He's so that's something which is, it tells us something that okay, fine. If you fix the tariffs with this guy, he should be able to you should be able to get something out of him, which is what you need at the end of it. So as far as the regional geopolitics is concerned, he said one interesting statement to Modi, and when he said that, "Oh, I'd let Prime Minister handle Bangladesh." Since then, there has been a complete meltdown in Bangladesh as to what's going to happen. We've seen the rhetoric dip. There used to be something or the other, some stupid thing or the other coming out of there. It just dipped off. Jaishankar, I believe, spoke to the foreign advisor there and said, "Boss, calm down." Post that, there's been a calm which is there. What do you think our policy for the neighborhood is going to be? Because at the end of it, the future order that everybody is talking about, and Mr. Jaishankar mentioned this in the Financial Times, is about regional powers. And he said this, it's a multipolar order, and US is pushing for it today. So, considering that this is a regional polar area of India, how do you think our policy will change in the region?
Well, on this multipolar thing, I've not read the full interview of Shankar with the FT, but I've read bits and pieces here and there, where he seems to have said that today United States is a proponent of a multipolar order.
Multipolar world.
I think uh, I think Jaishankar probably didn't exactly mean what he said. It is just the kind of statement he made in order to justify India's support for a multipolar world order.
Hmm.
He's taken Marco Rubio's statement that it's a multipolar order, but just one statement by the US Secretary of State doesn't mean that consensus are developed in the United States that there can be other centers of power in the world.
Yeah, it'll
Uh,
be difficult for them to swallow, right?
I don't think so that this is consonant with the MAGA philosophy and all the sort of imperial demands that Trump is making, including territorial demands going back to 19th century politics, which has nothing to do with multipolarity in that sense, except in a very, very narrow way where the big powers will decide amongst themselves what the distribution of their power would be within various geographies. That some area they dominate, one dominates another area, another dominates, and then what do you come up with? You come up with US, Russia, and China. So uh, that is one aspect. Uh, Secondly, uh, multi. You see, uh, multipolarity. I don't know if I have commented on this also. I was a bit struck by Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov's uh, interview, in which he was asked about multipolarity. And he said multipolarity is very different from alliance system because in multipolarity, everybody is treated as equal and with respect. However, uh, United States, China, and Russia have a special position. He didn't use this word, but this is what he meant because of the size of their economy and their military power and their nuclear capabilities. Yes, he said they are superpowers. And other organizations in other regions, whether it's ASEAN or GCC or the Arab League or this or that, they have their role in terms of a regional role. He didn't mention India, although before he elaborated, he said that, well, you have to have, in a multipolar world, how can you ignore China and Russia, giants like China and Russia? But when it came to describing the distribution of influence within a multipolar world, he thought of three superpowers. And that would also be, in some senses, uh, the American view in some circles that those who might be a little more realistic that America cannot dominate the world entirely and therefore has to cede ground. And which are the countries to which they cede ground? It has to be China foremost and to Russia because he's reaching out to Russia. Uh, India is not yet mentioned because we are not considered in that league. So that is with regard to multipolarity. With regard to Bangladesh, I interpret Trump's statement rather differently, and I've said so. See, journalists asked the question of Bangladesh. He didn't want to answer that question, so he just passed on that question to Modi to answer. But passing on a question to Modi to answer is very different from saying that Bangladesh is your baby, you deal with it as you like. I don't think he had that in mind. But we have overinterpreted that, I think.
But he mentioned one thing, sir, if I may, if you don't mind, that they've been handling this for 100 years and he knows better.
Between Pakistan and Bangladesh. He actually had in mind the Muslim invasions of India
Yeah,
and the creation of
yeah.
Pakistan.
That's what I interpreted, that it's more or less to do with Islamism.
Exactly. It has nothing to do with Bangladesh. Bangladesh came into existence only in 1971.
Yeah.
Unless, as you rightly said, he had the entire picture of the Islamic invasions of India, which then led to the creation of Pakistan, West and East Pakistan, and eventually Bangladesh. He's very loose in what he says, and he's not very sure about his facts and figures. He says whatever comes to his mind. He contradicts himself. For example, he said in his interview that there's $100 billion deficit with India, whereas actually it's 46.5 billion.
Yeah.
So obviously he doesn't read briefs. He has a certain impressionistic view, and then he blurts out whatever he has in his mind. And this Bangladesh thing also, I don't think we should overinterpret. Now, in terms of cooling down of things in Bangladesh, there is one vital element in this, and which is the warning given by the Bangladesh army chief.
Yeah.
If you go on as you are going, you will lose your sovereignty and independence, in the sense that he's very worried about the domestic fissures that are developing
Yeah.
in Bangladesh, which then can lead to a, I won't say a breakup of the country, but a kind of polarization of society, which then can very severely damage the country's social and economic system. So, if things are calming down a bit, it is probably because of that. Now, secondly, if you notice, even after Shankar met his counterpart, interim counterpart, what the Bangladesh side issued as a readout is negative. Each
Yeah.
time they meet our leader, they list out all their complaints against India and what they want from India. Now, Yunus saying that he wants to meet our prime minister. Now, that makes a little bit of a sense, because they're going to have a BIMSTEC meeting, and Yunus would be there, our prime minister would be there. The BIMSTEC headquarters are in Dhaka, and we want the BIMSTEC actually to survive and grow, because SAARC is not working. So, in that situation, if Prime Minister Modi snubs Yunus and says, "I won't talk to you," uh, that might be questionable diplomacy. Well, so, because there are other interests that are involved. Of course, we have to make sure that if and when that meeting takes place, uh, Yunus comes with a positive agenda uh, in his mind, and doesn't use that to bolster his own position. And then after the meeting, say that I said this to Modi, I said that to Modi, and that kind of thing, laying out a list of his demands and his concerns and stuff like that, which would then be problematic politically for us, because there will be people here who would say that, look, with all the atrocities committing on the Hindus and everything else, and you go and talk to this man. So, it has to be prepared very carefully, so that something positive comes out. But anyway, that is for the diplomats to deal with. I'm just generally expressing my view.
That's absolutely interesting. Thank you so much, sir. It's always lovely to talk to you, learn from you, and discuss the geopolitical environment around. It's very interesting times, and I think something that we said that we will see in a couple of years happening. It's happening in front of our eyes, and we are really lucky to live through this time to actually see this happen.
But it happened very quickly. He's
Yeah,
been in power how many weeks? 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 7 weeks,
6, 7 weeks.
seven
Yeah.
weeks. In 7 weeks, he created so much turmoil that
It's the age.
everybody
It's,
has to revise their sense of geopolitics.
I love it, sir, because it gives me a lot more opportunity to study and understand how the game is. Because what's happening is, because the change is happening, everybody's kind of exposing the old way of doing things, which was not known in the public domain. Of course, guys like you would know because you've dealt with it. But for people like me, I can see the old way of doing things kind of getting, the blanket off the face. So it's interesting for people like me to read, okay, this is how things are used to happen before. And now this thing, because the people in frustration are actually mentioning a lot of things that would happen before, which are not happening now, especially the Europeans. So that's interesting for people like us to read and understand and learn, sir, most
Great.
importantly. Thank you so much, sir. Lovely to
My
talk to you.
pleasure. Bye bye.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.